you to envision the letter E. I want you to envision 3 of them. Right here are my 3 E's that I was looking for in a field advisor. I wanted somebody who was an expert on the topic, had a lot of knowledge about it, reading, etc., who had basically well-read in the subject area that I was going to be doing. I wanted somebody who's experienced, not only knew about it, but had hands-on experience doing it, had built guitars on their own, had played guitars for several years, and understood the instrument really well. I also wanted somebody who was engaging, somebody who could capture my interest, somebody who could take this thing that I was interested in and show me all the different sides of it and kind of grow my interest in the subject area. I also got along with them really well, which is a big plus. So some of the tools, I'm going to overview some of the basic terms and things that I used throughout my project before I delve in and discuss the product itself. I used various tools throughout the project itself. These are a list of several of them: a joiner, bandsaw, belt sander, router. I'm going to describe a few of them specifically, the ones that I'm going to describe a few specifically. This right here is a picture of a bandsaw. A bandsaw is essentially a mounted saw right here. It's got a long, flexible, narrow blade and a tooth. It's used primarily for precision shape cutting. You can use it to cut shapes specifically, obviously, and then you can also use it for trimming down edges off of things. This here's a belt sander. A sander in general is used to smooth over surfaces and for finishing surfaces. A belt sander is a mounted sander that's run by a motor, so it's at higher speeds and can polish things more smoothly and at a quicker pace than your hand can. This is the physical belt sander itself, where you would press the wood against to sand it down, and it's primarily used in the beginning stages because it's motorized, so it strips wood down very quickly, even though it does provide a really good finishing quality because it's motorized. It makes it very smooth in the end. This right here is a router. It's essentially a handheld saw blade that you can use right here. This right here is the actual blade itself, and it's a very, very versatile tool. You can use it for all stages of work, and you can use it for routing out cavities. You can use it for finishing because it leaves a very smooth finish where it's cut. It's high versatility because of this, and it's primarily used though for hollowing out a cavity in the surface of a piece of wood. Here's an example of trimming the edge of a table. It can also be used in a flat surface to hollow out cavities. These are some of the shaping and finishing tools I use: wood rasps, wood files, and sandpaper on its own. Wood rasp. This is a picture of a wood rasp. It's used for rapidly removing wood by hand from curved surfaces typically. You can see, I'm not sure if you can see in the light here, it's got several large teeth on it. You use that to basically file away at the wood with your hand. And a wood file is very similar to this, with the exception that the teeth on it are much more refined and it's smaller, so that you can take the wood at a slower pace, and it's better for a finishing tool because it polishes it out smoother. And sandpaper is just another exaggeration of these in the same direction. It's used more for finishing. It takes less wood off than the two previously, and it polishes better. Now, before I start talking about my guitar, I'm going to talk about guitars in general. Some of you may be familiar, but here's a quick overview of a guitar. I like to think of a guitar like a giraffe. Here's the body of the guitar, the big meaty section. This is the neck of the guitar, and here's the head of the guitar way up on top. Some of the, key pieces to look for. This right here, it's hard to see on here, but there's a little strip right here, and it's called the nut. This is important, as well as the bridge right here. These are the 2 points that the string actually makes contact with the guitar and it's pinched against the guitar. These are both really important because as the string resonates, these are key transfer points for the basically vibrating of the strings. And if they're loose or if they're misplaced, then the strings won't vibrate as well. You won't get as much sustain in the guitar. This right here is the fretboard. This is where you actually depress your fingers to play the instrument. This is where you play the instrument, picking the strings, making them buzz. These 2 things right here are called pickups. They detect the vibrations of the strings with a magnetic field and basically transfer into an electronic signal, which you can play through an amplifier. Now I'm going to focus specifically on one aspect of my building of my guitar. I'm going to talk about the neck, head, and the fretboard a little bit. So when I began, I had to get the materials for the guitar that I was going to build. I started with a maple neck, I chose this because it's a very dense, hard wood. It would provide a good sturdy wood basically for the neck that I can play. It polishes out really easily because it's such a hard wood, and it transfers resonance really well throughout the body. So it would provide good resonance for the guitar. Then these are a few other aspects that I had to construct for my guitar: the head plate, the truss rod, the machine heads and tuning pegs, and the fretboard. I will talk about those more in depth as I go on. So the neck and head of the guitar went through several stages of development. I first had to basically start with the wood blank, and wood blank refers to a blank piece of wood before it's been worked at all, and as it's going through working, it's still typically referred to as a wood blank. And I had to cut the headstock, which is the top of the guitar, as I mentioned before. And a mortise and tenon joint, I'll talk about. That is where I join the neck and body of the guitar together so that it's a cohesive unit. And then the fun part of this is that there's a lot of concept that I get to put into it, a lot of my own flavor, if you will. It's essentially, part of it is preference as a player, like the dimensions of the guitar, the width of the neck, the thickness of the neck, things like that are pretty standardized, but they can be adapted to player preferences. But the body of the guitar and things like that, for example, are things that are entirely my own concept, along with some reasonable measure of practicality. But it's my own concept, and I can do as I want with it. So right here, this is essentially the wood blank that I began with for my neck. It started out as a single piece of wood, and I cut this actually off of the end of it. This is a 15-degree angle, which has to be measured out, because the headstock actually has to meet. Actually, that's coming up. But the headstock actually has to meet the neck at a 15-degree angle to ensure that the strings are pulled back hard enough so that there's tension across the nut, but not so hard that it'll provide cause for the strings breaking. And I use the belt sander to make this cut between those two pieces. And so here is, after I've cut those two pieces, I clamp them together, and I am bringing them up to the belt sander to sand them off so that the angle is actually even between the two, because cutting it with the belt sander is a way to get a rough cut, but it's not precise. So using the belt sander and having them clamped together like that is a way for me to ensure that the two angles match perfectly. Here is the headpiece alone, sanding it off so that it'll be more smooth and basically more presentable. So here's the actual physical sanding itself. It is, in fact, to match the angle of these two pieces of wood, which you can see clamped together, and to remove any imperfections. That's just a picture of the actual sanding. And these are the two pieces after they've been entirely finished and sanded before they've been joined together, the two neck and head lengths. And here's a picture of how they're actually going to be joined together. I'm actually going to take this piece of wood right here and join it to the top of the neck right there, in a fashion like this. This angle here, as I said, is 15 degrees, and the strings actually pull across the top of the neck and come down and join across the head here, so that there's tension across the edge of the neck up at the top. Now I'm going to talk about a mortise and tenon joint. Mortise and tenon joint is something that's been used for centuries, even before colonization and civilization, really. It's basically any form of wood joining that involves a peg of wood fitting into a slot of another piece of wood. It can be in any shape, it can be in any form. This is a really simple mortise and tenon joint. It's used for joining woods. Nowadays they use them with glue as well, so that it's a stronger joint. But it's a really strong reinforcer for joining wood. So here is the actual body as it's being worked on, and here is the neck right here. And these are actually reversed here. This is actually the tenon right here coming out, and the mortise is the actual cavity that the tenon goes into. So this is me with a template right here. This is a template on top of the guitar body, where I'll actually be routing out the cavity for the body where the tenon will fit into. And here I've traced out the tenon onto the neck itself, and I'm preparing to cut it out.